Hey everybody, welcome to the Sort of Okay show about horses with Buck and Kyle, though I think we should change the name because I think it's an incredible show, and anybody who's watching obviously must agree with us because it is awesome what we're doing here.
I think that there's probably two people that think that.
Yes.
You and me. There we go.
So we're here at the AECs. We've been doing this every day. We're going to review a little bit of the rides, not the rides today, but like the course today and the advanced. We're going to talk a little bit about Burley, and we're going to try to, because we're trying to cover as much as possible, maybe talk about how our course walk and our plans yesterday, how either they came to fruition or they really had nothing to do with the piece of paper that we, or the plan that we had, which is usually what happens in my riding. So, anyways, what did you think today?
Yeah, it was. I thought the course rode kind of exactly how we walked it. There was sort of a question whether it was going to be 5 or 6 at the first corner, the table to the corner combination in the arena up there, and all mine did 5 easily, and then combination at the end, the double brush table, either 4 strides or 5 strides to the right hand corner. My plan with all of them was to do the 4 strides and then with Flower to do a 5th stride. That's kind of, I got lucky today. That kind of worked out,
Yeah.
But it was. I think for the most part, there really wasn't very many. It wasn't. There wasn't a lot of big jumps. There wasn't a true advance. There was no ditch. There was no popping. There was no, some things that you expected at an event. There weren't any. So, there wasn't a lot of big fences, but you had to be accurate. And look, you needed a horse that was quick and nippy, and didn't need a fast horse. You didn't need a big galloper. You needed one that you needed to kick along. And so some of the horses that are doing well are more suited to that kind of style, I think. But on the whole, the facility held up. The ground with all those horses held up great. I don't think there was anything. There were no accidents that I think there was a few 20s here and there, but for the most part, it was a safe day. And I think there was a lot of good stuff about the course as far as educating horses and riders and getting into a rhythm. And there was no sort of cheap lines and no cheap distances. Everything was kind of the way it should be. And if you wanted to go on the forward one, you could. If you wanted to wait, you could. But they were, there was no. I hate when people the choice is it 2 or 3 or is it But when it's past about 4 or 5, I think it's all right. And the fences all had nice faces to them, a lot of brush, and I think it although it was quite twisty and turny, I didn't think it was actually. I thought it was actually an educational course, and the horses and riders actually I think probably feel all right tonight.
Well, and actually, see, I would say I agree with you for the most part, and then but I will say my contrary opinion would be, having watched the intermediate yesterday, I last night was very concerned about how this would ride today. I mean, it was obvious what it needed to have, but the way the intermediate rode, I kind of was like, man, I don't know about this. This is a little bit awkward. The water jump, which they moved back from where the intermediate one was set where some horses bounced out in the intermediate or some put a stride in. The ground jury here made the decision to alter the course slightly, and I think it was absolutely warranted. The one then was about perfect. And then down on the bottom, they did remove that post and that back rail in the last oxer. I rode perfectly well. Mine was a bit quiet and actually very spooky, and I had to really chase him on the first 2, and he would have been there for that back rail on the corner, but I think they made the right decision taking that off because I'm not sure it would have worked for everybody.
I think you have to sort of hand it to the officials and to, certainly Gretchen Butts, the TD, did a really good job of looking after us and working with us and listening to the riders. So that's always huge because we have a lot of officials that don't do that. And I think for Tremaine Cooper too, it's a tough deal because obviously Mark's over at Burley. Mark Phillips is the designer here. And, we had a lot of weather. We had a lot of, and some things that, the riders questioned. And, and I think the officials did too. And Tremaine has to sort of tread lightly. You don't want to diss another professional's job, but at the end of the day, you have to do what's best for the horses and for the riders and for the overall safety of the sport. And so I think Tremaine did a great job this weekend, and all the officials did.
And boots on the ground, it's always one thing to plan something out, but once you've laid it out and you're there and you're walking, it's dressed up and the flags are on, sometimes you can kind of go, wait a minute, that didn't seem to look just right, and you will alter, and you can't be stuck on that. This is the only way that it is, and I think they did a fantastic job. And yeah, you're absolutely right. You've got to have respect for the person that laid out the sort of profile, but when you're there, you also have to be confident enough to make some adjustments, and that's where these guys really showed up, I think. And we have that a lot where sometimes you bring up something as a rider, and the officials think you're trying to get away with something, and if we have students or if we're riding our own horses, we spend a lot of time thinking about what we're going to do. Like I said, last night I lay there and I had a bit of a troubled sleep, not because I thought the course was impossibly difficult, but because I was worried about if it didn't go smoothly, which the intermediate seemed to be a little bit scrappy. I was worried that some of the fences were big enough that you could get into trouble, and I didn't want to be the person that got in trouble that wasn't able to get out of. And I came up here to watch. I went and changed, came up here, and watched Lauren Kiefer go on her gray horse on this top part here, and was slightly ashamed actually of having that sort of worry, because it was abundantly clear at that point that if you rode well, things were going to go well. She made it look easy. I watched Ryan Wood come around here, and he had a little more adjusting to do, but he did an incredible job of it. And the same thing, again, if you rode well, the answers were right there. And I did see a bunch of people jumping around here. I watched you on one horse. You, of course, made it look terrible, but, Reggie is a bit green, and over time it'll come together, I'm sure. But no, I watched a bunch of good riders, and that was the thing, is that division had a lot of good riders in it, and I watched them, and they made it look very simple. And then I watched a couple of people that would be greener advanced riders that are maybe not as strong, and I watched one have a stop up on the top of the bank there, but it was a very clear early on that jump that things were going wrong, and no solution was presented for the horse, and it was a very simple exercise, I thought. And I think that's a pretty fair thing, that your riders that were confident and able to articulate to the horse what needed to happen, that they were able to do that. Funny thing for me up there was I thought that rode very well, and it looked very easy. The two tables up on the hill and the angle, it was like a very straightforward one. My play horse went up the hill, and I should have known he was going to do it, and spooked at the rail across the top there in that big wall there, and ran sideways. I got up there, I saw a line that was nothing like the line that I walked about probably 8 strides away, and I was like, well, there's no way I'm going to get back to the other line. And I was like, you know what, this is the one you're going on. I don't even know what the hell the striding in there's going to be like, but this is going to be the only line available to me. That's the one I'm taking. And it worked out really well on the one. He does have a very naturally big stride, but after I came out of that, all of a sudden he put himself right up on the line and wanted against the rail, because I think he was like, okay, apparently I'm not going to be screwing around today. And it sort of improved for me from there, and I was really happy. I mean, my plans, like you said, your plans all went sort of according to what you wanted. I did the 5 in the ring over here to the corner. I was planning the 6. I came over here, and I planned on doing the 4, but I waited so much to the table in, I was able to he's very rideable, I was able to just sort of niche him out a little bit and hold on a nice 5, and it worked out quite well. But what really got me working was actually that little brushy ramp, the bend down to the toothbrush, and I had planned on staying 1 stride out and making sure I was on that for 3 strides while I jumped in, got taken down to the bottom of the hill. I came at the thing like just off to the side. He held the line beautifully, but I mean, he could have just said, you know what, I'm not doing this. He got a good jump on it, but he literally stayed on the shot that I had, the only shot that I had, but it was nothing like the plan that I had. I mean, I was coming down to it. I'm pretty free flow with my stuff, as most people watching would probably attest to. But I just went down there and I just kept him on both reins, and that was the thing, is if you actually were willing to make a change or ride the change that happened, it was still available to you. And I love that, because I really believe in participation out here. I'm not a big, oh, well, you know what you need to do is put your heels down more and then just arch your back a little bit, because we're not riding hunters. You have to be in the moment creating something.
Yeah, I think we, as Americans anyway, if we would maybe stuck the spurs in and gave them a stick every once in a while, we would have finished the last 2 championships instead of walked home.
Yeah.
With our tail between our legs. So I think that's something that I think that Mark did a really good job in that. I'd say with Burley, I know for the last few years that the FEI is going away from options, but you saw in the Olympics and you saw today at Burley that there were a lot of options, and I think that there need to be options in events.
I agree.
You can't. People can't say, oh, well, the riders didn't ride if they only have one option. If your horse has a short stride and it's a long one stride and you don't make it, what option did you have? Yeah. And so when the course designers put options, then if something goes wrong, then you can say the rider didn't use their head. But if there's not an option, then you can't blame the rider. And if you look at Burley, yeah, the results were tough. It's a tough course. There's bad weather. And you know what you're getting there. But in the end, it was a safe day. And you know what? The riders, I didn't see all of it, but just looking at the scores, the riders, for the most part, made the right choices. When they were in trouble, when they had to get out of jail free card, yeah, it might have cost you 10 or 15 or 20 seconds, but you were able to be clear, safe, and produce a good picture. That, in the end, is what we want. And so why would we not encourage course designers to give lots of different options? They don't have to be options that, that you can go and do an option and, still win the event. It might take you 30 seconds, but I can guarantee you I'd rather lose 30 seconds than be sitting in the hospital.
Absolutely. And the thing is with that, I think you create when they say, well, the rider didn't make a very good decision, and you hit it right on the head. Like, let's say you come in on a long one.
Jersey.
Yeah, you couldn't. You needed absolutely. There was one type of horse that was going to get it done well, no matter what. There was another type of horse that could get it done if everything just worked out, and the other ones had no option on it to get away with it. But I think you create a better competition-minded rider when you actually present them with the option, because you can get in there and go, oh no, that doesn't seem like a good idea, and it gets you thinking more in the present rather than committing stupidly to things that aren't going to work, which is so often where the problems rise in our sport. Is someone will be coming to fence and they'll say, like the one that makes me always shudder is when they say, oh, I jumped it out of stride. Great, fantastic. All I can think is you jumped it out of stride, and it usually to me means that you went to something, and if it had gone wrong, you wouldn't have had an option to fix it. And that's in our combinations and things. You need to be able to make some modifications in the moment. And I think you're absolutely right. With the American performances at the top level, we do so much teaching and training of people to get them to ride well and get them to sit right and be right in the middle. And if you do watch and take your top 15 riders through the world, they're not all equitating around.
Yeah, you look at Philip and Wood just saw in Americans. I mean,
yeah,
Philip is leaning off the side, to get the horse over the jump. I mean, you gotta fight, and you got to, But again, great example of he got over that corner, and he didn't have to go to the next.
Exactly.
He could go to the other way, and instead of crashing out, he could go back, and so he picked up a few time points.
And in that moment where he just made everything happen, you saw a few people continue on stupidly to the next corner, like, oh, I guess I got over the first one. It's like that's the limiting factor in the sport, in any sport, I think, is not being able to be fluid in your thought process in the heat of the moment. But to create that, you'd better actually have the options there to make that work. So
and it looked like to me at Burley, again, it's just on the TV or on the computer, but the faces of the jumps looked, inviting. They're big, yes, they're wide, but they
present well.
They present well. I wasn't totally sure again, just off the TV at the Olympics, I wasn't so sure that the faces of those were as good as you might hope, but it's a tough game, but I think for for everybody to say, oh, the riders didn't use their head. Well, sometimes they don't have a choice. So I like this idea that there's going to be lots of different options, and because every horse doesn't think the same, and you're always taught to ride to the horse's strength.
Yeah.
Right? And you always work on their weakness. But if they're not good at something and there's a way to show off what they're good at, why not do that?
Well, and the thing is when you have, like I always, like as I ride a huge variety of horses that are not, a lot of them people might not choose to ride, and I might not choose to ride them as well, but I will find myself, knowing their limitations and trying to work within that limitation to get them to do whatever job I need them to do, whether it's adding a step or leaving out. But when you end up on the complete horse, the one that can do all of the stuff and is rideable enough and trained enough, then it doesn't. Then you can come down the same combination 3 or 4 different ways, and you're still going to be successful. You don't have to then you can rely on your training. But sometimes you can train however you want, and you will not fill the void that the horse might come in with. And because of that, you need to be able to, like he did in the corners over here. I thought he did a great job with, you go down there on the 5, or you could stay out on the 6 and give them a little bit more time to assess it, and the same at the end here. And so I like that because I love to be able to participate and make that change up, but also because you go through this 100 horses, they're not all the same, so we can't treat them the same. Not like NASCAR where you make the car one car, every driver is driving within a very small parameter, and a lot of times you can get some super horses. Like Henley Britannia was unbelievable, but it was not conventional, and she had to do a lot of different things to achieve the results she achieved. At the same time, other horses might not need that much variety to what they do. So I think again, when I finished the course, I was thrilled. I was thrilled because I was nervous before, and then when I watch the other riders ride, I get sometimes you have to remind yourself it is just your job to go out there and do your thing. And so whatever the nerves are, when you come out of that box, you've got to go and commit to the plan, adjust the plan. I had to adjust the plan a couple times out there, but what was great for me, and I said it to you before I went on course, I said the reality for me was I was going to know a lot more about my horse at the end of today than I knew going into it because of that hill coming up. How would he feel after that? Because he's pretty good in these derby type situations, but it still had to get enough step there. The biggest thing is I'm looking for information to use later, and that information that I got is pretty solid, but how cool is that to be able to go to all the events I've gone to with them, and I'm still was waiting to find that component. And so I got it here. The footing, after it rained yesterday, it rained the day before. I mean, if you look at the footing here, if we take just a quick video here at the ground, I mean, look at horse is sinking in. It's shoe depth. That's perfect. And this is off of a turn, coming forward. The horses we've got, strides from there to there. Horses adjusting, so they should be tearing this up and slipping.
Yeah, probably 200 horses.
Yeah, and so many horses, and we've only sunk in that much. And not only that, but look at it. It still has the ability to absorb it. So when I was running around today, I went down that hill. I let him gallop on down the hill because, yes, it was a little bit slippery in the corners, which, I'm sorry, that's our job to adjust for that. Yeah. But they couldn't have given us a better platform to work on. So if you slipped out here,
it's your fault.
Yeah, you weren't doing your job. Your job is to read it, but this tells the tale of how this site, really set up. And when we were down in the back, I rode confident that I knew, and this is a big thing for me. I go very slow at a lot of events because I don't trust what they've done for the footing. I mean, my horses are really important to me for many reasons, but I go to so many events and I'll be like, well, so here I am in this placing. Well, it doesn't matter because I can't really turn them loose. On this, with what they had, I went along, quicker than usual, and I felt confident with it because at least I knew I was on stable footing, good footing, and my horse was going to come away from it well. And tonight the horse looks really good because of that. That doesn't happen very often for me.
No, and it was, for me, you asked me about that hill, and of course I had just ridden Park Trader, you could have the whole course up that hill, and that would be the best thing that ever happened. But for Reggie, who is he's my pet, and I spend the whole time patting him as I go around, and literally I'm going around and thinking, as I get to the top of that hill, I pat him, and his ears are like straight forward, and I was like, all right, because if he'd gone to that top of the hill and everything went, I would have gone, that's enough, that's fine, But he loved this ground, and the ears pricked to the end, jumped awesome, and it is fun to have one that you love like that you had for your whole life, and just every time I get to ride him, it's such a joy, and he loves it so much. I mean, his ears were up, and you could hear people cheering for him, and it's that makes it so cool, and the fact that he come home, he's won lots of events, and maybe we'll win tomorrow, maybe we're close enough, but at the end of the day, he loved the ride, and I could have gone faster, probably, but I probably would have had to pet him a lot less, and it's awesome to have Kathleen here, and the Seagulls were over at Burley watching Burley, but they were able to watch, and that's really fun, and but it is, the event begins and ends with the footing on the course, on the cross-country course in this sport, and you have to say to Mark Phillips, Mark Bellissimo, all the people here trying, they did that great, and we're really excited that they're going to open the course up to the golf course that is an Arnold Palmer golf course that I'm kind of honestly a little bummed that it's not still here because I kind of like to play golf, but it will be great to be able to go really out and get galloping, but with this being put together so quickly, you couldn't ask for better results, I don't think.
No, and when you come in, here's the thing is, when you come into this, now not everybody's going to be able to do this with the footing, but you can start with a little fertilizer, a little, you could put down, they used to put peanut shells down at one event that worked out really well. You could do spreading of your manure at certain times to improve the footing and give some thought to what's going on there. Obviously the aerating and the water is always important, but when you have this type of footing and you do what they've started to do here, I would come here and run, however many times a year I might run in advanced, I'd actually run and try and compete rather than going to what I usually do and going, oh God, the footing's rock hard, God, it's still uneven over here. I just can't. You've got to hold off on it. And this would allow so much more an equal playing field. Not that you can go crazy, because there was some slipping and things like that, but again, you have responsibilities, you can't say, well, I'll go the fastest. You might not have the fastest horse on the day, and I think this was a really good, incredible starting point. At the end of the day, I felt great. All went. I thought it went very well. Watching the advance, it was so much better than the intermediate and the riding. But I guess that's the quality. And then I went down to the river down below the cross country course with the kids and played in they went swimming in the river on the rocks and stuff. And the whole thing has a great atmosphere. I just can't believe how great, how good I feel about it. Now there will be complaints about this being a little bit of a derby type setup. But the people got to watch. They cheered you out of the ring, and then there's the big screen TV, so the spectators can actually watch and tell you what they saw. And yes, when they open it up to a longer galloping stretches, it's going to be better. But you had to start with, at least you did the right things here to then build upon it for the other things. So.
And at the end of the day, it was safe.
Yeah.
And there was, the things that were maybe we're not sure they were going to be safe. It made it so it was guaranteed it was going to be safe. And that's, at the end of the day, that's what everybody wants. You can always make it bigger and better, but it's always, if you push too much and then you have to go back, that's always a bad thing.
Especially the first one. It had to come off well, and I think it did, and not, in the barn, not everybody that we brought here had their best weekend or anything, but it still was a good competition.
Yeah.
So,
exactly. Now anyway, there's a concert here that some country music star that is
gonna water donkeys.
Yeah, perfect.
Buy a donkey a drink. That's the charity here. So you guys might want to look into that, because actually it's sort of interesting when you read about it. I don't know, have you read any of that stuff that they had around?
haven't, but I will now.
Yeah, well, they've got the most heavily used animal in Africa is actually the donkey. Some huge number of them that are basically working down there. And so this foundation is to bring wells and drinking for the working animals over there to improve their conditions. And you know, it's a really that they've already started off with not just thinking this way, but thinking about giving back to what they can do globally. And I think that's awesome. I love that stuff. If I was wealthy, I would give money away.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, you're not.
But I'm not, and I still
so
do.
I guess we won't be fussy.
Anyways, thanks for joining us. We'll wrap this up tomorrow. Obviously, you guys can check out the results. We should have been keeping up on the results a little bit more, but it takes a long time to run through all that. And we did want to say, you know, our thoughts on the courses today, and then also how the walking road versus how our walk correlated into the riding today. All right. Thanks a lot.
Bye.